because it's
Why?
been disabled
Okay.
by whoever is hosting this meeting.
Huh?
I cannot turn my video on because the host will not allow me to turn it on.
Hello.
Who's the host? You, Amber?
I'm good, but I'm in the middle of a Board of Trustees meeting of OHA.
Is there a time better that I can call later?
You know, this meeting will go on for at least another 2 hours.
Let me
To
try.
try me in the morning.
Okay.
Very good. I will do that. And I'll shoot you a quick email also.
Thank you, thank you. Aloha.
Okay.
Millie, can we see your face?
I don't know, I can't take it off. The mute went off, but the start video doesn't.
It
Hi.
says on the screen, you cannot start your video.
Oh, okay, there's
Yeah.
the, there it
Okay,
is.
there we
There you
go.
Thank you, trustee. Thank you, Colleen.
Colin is
Okay, thank you.
telling me he can't.
I have Ian.
Yeah.
Ian,
But
Chris,
the
and Tayo. Okay.
the Native Hawaiian Chamber for October is on.
And it's like,
Yeah, that's on.
I saw.
Yeah, 13th.
I was supposed to have a meeting with her this morning, but she's like,
you weren't on the, you
Oh.
weren't on the Maui.
Yeah,
Con.
he's
No,
staying,
no, no.
he doesn't understand the process,
They
that's
have
why.
questions for me. then they can- They have-
Yeah. Yeah,
and I have to be on
Okay.
Zoom. Because this- I want them to be here.
okay. All right. Yeah, bye.
yeah, because we had to cancel the last meeting
Yes, yes, yes. It was
and
right
we have a
around-
deadline, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, are we ready?
Sure, I think so.
Colin, by chance, do you have a script?
I do.
Okay. So let's go ahead and start.
Good afternoon. I'm Colin Kippen and I'm moderating this meeting today of the Public Land Trust Working Group. I would like to call today's Public Land Trust Working Group meeting to order. Let the record reflect it is Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. It is now 1:35 p.m. This meeting may be viewed and observed via live stream at www.oha.org/live stream. We are recording today's meeting for the purpose of producing minutes, which will become the official record of this meeting. The members present in today's meeting are Hulu Lindsay, Mililani Trask, Sherry Broder, Don Chang, Louis Salaveria, and Ryan Kanakaole. Providing administrative and technological support are myself, Colin Kippen, Amber Kalua, Zuri Aki, Kevin Chak, and Tiger Lee. The first presentation we have today is Office of Hawaiian Affairs presentation of the statutory framework of the PLT Working Group established by Act 226, Session Laws of Hawaii 2022. Amber, do we have anyone signed up to testify on this item?
No, we do not.
Moving on. Next on our agenda is, may I pause for a second here? Do we want to take all of the testimony up front for each of the sections?
We'll take it
Members?
one section at a time, Colin.
All right, then let us now proceed to the presentation of the statutory framework of the PLT Working Group. May, could you speak up, please?
Pull the microphone.
Mahalo nui loa for your attendance here, first official meeting of the Act 226 Working Group. I'm going to provide you just a brief overview of the Act 226. In 2022, the 31st legislature of the state of Hawaii passed Senate Bill 2021, which was enacted by the governor on June 27th as Act 226. The government of the state of Hawaii found that to uphold its constitutional trust obligation and duty to Native Hawaiians, it was imperative that the cap on OHA's interim annual share of the income and proceeds of the public land trust be raised. Funds were appropriated to OHA for a past due sum owed for any and all underpayments of OHA's pro rata portion of the income and proceeds of the public land trust for the period from July 1st, 2012 to June 30th, 2022. And the establishment of a working group to determine the pro rata share of the income and proceeds from the public land trust due annually to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. In accordance with Act 226, the established working group was to be comprised of 6 members, 3 appointed by the governor and 3 appointed by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees. The governor appointed Don Chang, Director of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and Chair of the Board of Land and Natural Resources, Louis Salavera, Director of the Department of Budget and Finance, and Ryan Tanaka-Olik, Deputy Attorney General. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees appointed Lulu Lindsay, Chair of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees and Maui Trustee, Lilani Trask, Vice Chair of the OHA Board of Trustees and Hawaii Island Trustee, and Sherry Grover, esteemed attorney and professor of law at the Illinois Richardson School of Law. Act 226 Working Group maintains a threefold purpose. Purpose 1, to account for all ceded lands in the public land trust inventory. 2, to account for all income and proceeds from the public land trust. And 3, to subsequently determine the 20% pro rata share of the income and proceeds from the public land trust due annually to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs for the betterment of conditions of Native Hawaiians. Act 226 further provides that the working group, with the cooperation of any department or agency that uses, manages, or receives income, proceeds, or any other funds derived from the public land trust, shall prepare and submit a report to the legislature of its findings and recommendations, including any proposed legislation and the amount it determines for the annual amount of the 20% pro rata share of income and proceeds from the public land trust. Finally, in accordance with Act 226, OHA shall provide any necessary administrative support, including preparation of the required report. Mahalo.
Members, are there any questions on that item? May we proceed forward?
Proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Attorney Aki. Next on our agenda is item B, Department of Land and Natural Resources presentation and explanation on the State Land Information Management System, SLIMS, and the Public Land Trust Information System, PLTIS, including but not limited to how the PLTIS incorporated SLIMS, how the two systems differ, what are the sources of data, what are the sources for accounts receivable for income and proceeds, what are the sources for accounts receivable for income and proceeds from the Public Land Trust, how complete and accurate is the current state of the PLTIS, and any planned improvements to the current system. How are the GIS, Geographic Information System, and the TMKs used? That is the subject matter in item B. Amber, do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No, we do not.
May we proceed, members?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Colin. This is Don Chang,
Maybe you can move the microphone. right
Chairperson
now.
of the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I have with me on Zoom DLNR staff who actually has firsthand knowledge on the PLTIS system, the composition, the information that's included in the system. And the intention is to walk us through to do a tutorial and be available to answer any questions. So with that being said, could I ask that the following be permitted to join our meeting? Chris Wong from DLNR, Mohai Collins, Ian Hirokawa, and Kaya Watanabe from DLNR. as they will actually walk us through the SLIMS and the PLTIS system and provide some specific responses to the questions or the information that's posted on the agenda.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, sure.
Could you repeat the names and can you
Oh.
tell us what their positions are at DLNR to the extent that you know? If you don't know, maybe when they speak, they can
Okay.
inform us.
So that I might not misrepresent, I'm going to ask them, just in
Okay,
the interest of time too,
yeah,
as they introduce themselves to tell us what their position is, and then they can, the next person. So,
okay.
thank you, if that's okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's fine. Thank you.
So let's first, Ian, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first, your position.
Good afternoon, Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division, and my position is Special Projects Coordinator.
Special projects?
Yes, Special Projects Coordinator.
Okay.
Chris Wong,
Hi, yes. My name is Chris Wong. I'm the IT manager for Land Division.
thank you, Chris. Next, I will call Kaya Watanabe.
I think Kyle is just on phone.
Oh, he's just,
I don't
Oh,
see a camera on
oh.
his, yeah.
Kyle, I think are you on the phone? Look. Could you introduce yourself? Okay, I'm gonna go on to Mahoy Collins. Mahoy, could you introduce yourself, please? Oh, yeah, that's why hard.
Sorry, I can hear, they're in the same office, just so everyone, Kaio and Moy are in the same office. I mean, I can hear them talking, but for some reason their audio is not coming through to the Zoom. So I can just say they're both part of our abstract staff here in Land Division.
Okay,
And
Kyle
Moy is the
and
speaker.
Mahoy, thank you, are part of the abstract set. All right, so Ian, are you going to walk us through the presentation of the PLTS and the
Sure.
SLIMs? Or
Yes.
how do you want to present that?
Yeah, so we'll focus on the PLTIS, but I think before I start, I'll just give some background so kind of everybody understands what the lay of the land is with Land Division, sort of our databases here. So I think first off, how we want to clarify is SLIMS was our internal land management database, property management database. So what it was an internal system. It was essentially custom designed back in, I think, 2000 on our own internal server. And what it was for the management of lands under Land Division's management of essentially Land Division's land. So it would track our tenants, our rents, whatever, if it was revocable permits, whatever dispositions, and tenant status, make sure they're in compliance and so forth. What happened was SLIMS basically became technologically obsolete because, like I said, it was an internal system on our own servers. At some point, the servers get old and you can't replace them anymore. So what we did was and it was designed by Yardi. So what happened was around, I think, 2015 or so, 2016, we looked to start replacing it. And what we ended up going with was Yardi's current property management system called Voyager. And the difference is that is an online web-based system, essentially fulfilling the same functions as SLIMS, but it's a proprietary online management system. So that's what our internal system is now. That system it's not open for public review. It's a closed system. You need a license to access it. And the reason is because there's essentially some confidential tenant information on the system. So it's for our own internal management. the difference between the PLTIS, so the PLTIS, the Public Land Trust Information System, that is a GIS publicly accessible database that anyone can access. You just have to create an account and you can access it. The difference, as I like to explain, is that SLIMS, now Voyager, is maybe applies to a smaller subset of lands, which is, like I said, lands under land divisions, management and control, where PLTIS applies to essentially all state lands. You know, there's information in there for all state lands. So a good, I like to say, you know, maybe the Voyager system is a narrower scope, but goes a little deeper, where PLTIS has a broader scope, but it's not, doesn't have the same depth of information. So for example, PLTIS, you wouldn't look at, you couldn't get necessarily whether a 10 is in default or something like that, or, you know, what the status of their insurance is. That's not information you would get, but it's a broader scope in terms of the types of land, the breadth of lands that it covers. So what I was going to do is kind of give you a brief overview of the PLTIS system. That's, I think, the one that, you know, all you folks would use, and it both has, but it's based on the same data set. At least for us, it's based on the same data set. So, you know, it should be the same in Voyager and PLTIS. So kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of the PLTIS and show you how it works. And so I'm gonna, if I can, go ahead and share my screen here. And can you all see the PDF that I have?
Yes.
Okay, I'm kind of low tech, so I'm just gonna keep each page as I go along. So again, this is the Public Land Trust Information System, PLTIS. So what it is, as I said, a GIS-based database application which maintains information about the lands of the Public Land Trust. So it's administered by DLNR, and state and county agencies enter data directly or can import data into the PLTIS. So what I should make clear, I guess, and kind of going off this is, you know, it's not like we input or audit the data that goes in there. It's up to the other agencies that have, you know, that to input their data as they see fit. When the system went online, of course, you know, we took all the agency's data at the time and put it in. So there is existing data in there, but, you know, we can't vouch for the currentness or accuracy of data especially that's not in our control. So something like an agency like DOA or DOT, I can't vouch that, okay, that lessee is current or what they're paying is current. But, you know, the trust land status should be, you know, should be there, and that's something that doesn't really change. So you can access the system at pltis.hawaii.gov. What you see here is the intro screen, and it allows you to either log in or create an account, register online to create an account. So the purpose of the system, it allows users to search for state-owned parcels and view status, encumbrances, and other information. Encumbrance may include leases, permits, rights of entries, easements. So when you first enter the PLTIS, you're going to see, you know, essentially the Hawaiian Islands, but you can zoom in and it's pretty close down and drill down to, like, let's say a specific parcel. So I believe this is Ward and South King. So this must be, I think, looks like Thomas Square. So, you know, you can click on it, and if it's a government parcel, it'll have the red shading, and you'll get a data screen on basically the TMK address, coordinates, owners, and right here you get the trust land status, 5B, acreage, and encumbrances. And then what you can do further is click on a parcel detail and you'll get even more information. So it'll bring up a second screen, which gives you more information here, you know, gives you zoning, the owner. If you kind of scroll down, you don't really see it here, but if you kind of scroll down this, you'll get the encumbrances reported. So here's the second half. You'll see that Thomas Square has an executive order to the city, and this is the reference number. It doesn't bring up the document though, so it's not a link to the actual yield. It's just additional information, but that's basically the information screen.
I have a very simple question. Is it okay if I ask
Yes,
question, Chair?
yes.
Sure.
Only because the word encumbrance means very different between land and for finance. In this particular case, when we say encumbrance, are these the entitlements or how the asset or the land was transferred?
Yes.
What is the
Oh.
recognition of
Sorry.
the word encumbrance in this particular
Yes,
case?
yes to your essentially a land disposition or transfer.
Okay,
So it may not be the entire parcel, you could have like an easement or a revocable permit covering a portion. I don't think it goes that deep to tell you where exactly the RP area is, but it'll tell you, okay, what dispositions are affecting the property. But yeah, when we say
Gotcha.
encumbrance, we mean essentially dispositions.
gotcha.
In
Okay,
this
thank you.
case, yeah, executive
And
order.
Ian,
Mhm.
this is Don. Trust land status. Could you explain how that is obtained?
Oh, okay. So basically it it was taken from the information that was contained in the old SLIM system, because at the time the PLTS was created, we were still on the SLIM system. So whatever the records were in the data the data set that was in SLIMs, we ported it over to the PLTIS. So that's the basis. Now, as to how they even got there from the beginning, my understanding is that at one point there was an effort to determine the trust land status of essentially the state lands. That was way before my time, so I wasn't part of that. But my understanding was they did record searches and checked the sort of the chain of it wasn't necessarily chain of title, but that sort of chain of ownership, if the lands were, depending on who owned it at the time and when the certain acts were passed, there was an effort to determine at that point trust land status. So if there's additional questions about that, Tayo and Mahoy can try to answer, but I don't have too much background into that.
Okay.
Would that be helpful? Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, how the determinations were in fact made, and if there's ever been an audit to determine, what the rate of error is, because, we're talking about people doing it and difficulties in accessing records. And I have a second question that goes with that question, which is that it's my understanding from the Native Hawaiian treatise that one of the criticisms of SLIMs, and then now that you say you just incorporated the data that SLIMs had, the setup of data that SLIMs had already determined, is that DLNR used a rule of thumb, which was if the parcel is 50% or more public land trust, then the parcel was put in as a public land trust parcel. Whereas if the parcel was less than 50% PLT, then it was put in as non-PLT. So I'm just wondering if that can be confirmed or denied.
Nope, good question.
And then, to that, then the question is, well, did it get counted as non-PLT because it ended up in the harbors, or did it get counted as non-PLT because it was in the watershed? So the income and proceeds
Sure.
could be completely different. So I'm just wondering if that's,
No, that's a fair question.
Okay.
So, Ian?
Thank you,
The two
Don.
questions,
Okay.
and then you can decide. So one, I think maybe Mahoy can walk us through the process, because I think Mahoy did a lot of the confirming the trust land status, and what did he do to determine that? And then the second question that Sherry had is, when a parcel of land is a mixture of both seeded and non-seeded, how does DLNR report that on the public trust status?
Okay, and I had one third question, which
remember all
was
these
there ever an
questions.
audit or a review or anything to determine what the extent of accuracy was, because as I said, we only have human beings
Sure.
working on it.
Mhm.
And so, it may be that, there were some issues or problems, and the Slims was developed, did you say 2000? Is that when you said that, when they,
I think so. It was around 99, 2000, around then.
all right,
I see Millie, Lonnie, you've got your hand up? So,
Yep.
yeah.
Millie?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment here, because we do have a final report that will be due to the state legislature. And as we're having these discussions, I don't want things to drop through the cracks. So I'm not sure who's here taking our notes for OHA. But we will definitely need the tape of this message to be preserved, of this meeting, and also the PowerPoint that we're having. I'm not sure that I can appreciate the base data that we're getting here. What we're saying is that we're going to be taking a look at the SLIMS calculation. But I want somewhere in our final report that this is put down. Because what we're saying here is that we're using in present time, 2023, records that are many, many years old. You know what I'm saying? And I do have some questions in terms of some examples, because there's hundreds and hundreds of parcels. But in preparation for this discussion, I went to look for ceded lands parcels that are currently in commercial use, making millions of dollars. And I can't find a single allocation for my office over past several years. The example is Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea is clearly ceded lands. It's been subjected to commercial use for years. And where we are historically is I'm supposed to be getting 20 cents on the dollar, which is where the state put me, but I can't find a record of the 20 cents. Nor can I find a record in the past documents that were used that show me what the commercial value is that is being paid. I'm having to look for that detail myself.
All
And
right,
it's
Millie, Lonnie,
significant, so I mean, I just want to know where these things are while we're discussing it.
okay, and I have one last question to follow up on Trustee Trask's question, which is that when SLIMS was done, because that seems to be the first
right.
building block put in for this, did they use 1958 as of 1959 as the date? So maybe, I don't know, because we're talking about going back
Right.
a lot. I don't know if these people can all answer that question.
So
but-
one, if we can first have Mahoy, if you as the abstractor can walk us through the process that your office used to identify the trust land status. One, if you can do that first, and then two, after that, oh my God, I gotta remember the questions you asked, Sherry. And
Okay,
then Sherry also asked the question of whether, and Ian, this may be more something, well, how Deal and Art said, if the parcel is both seeded and non-seeded, how do you determine which category it falls into? But let's first go fundamentally. Mahoy, can you walk us through the process that your office used to determine the trust land status that went into the original SLIMS program? And then we're going to tackle on Millie Lonnie's much more difficult question after that. But Mahoy, can you walk us through that? Ian, if they're in another room, can you bring them into your office?
Yeah, he's coming to my desk. One
Okay,
second.
thank you, thank you.
You're on. Oh, okay. You're gonna sit next to me. Okay.
Hula, we're gonna need more donuts than this.
And
I
we get,
I need a sugar rush.
would you like some water?
No, no,
Yeah.
I'm
Water?
I'm just
Okay.
joking, I'm just
Could I?
joking.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Okay, go ahead, Moy. Go
I
ahead.
don't think we have enough time today.
Hi, everybody. Moy.
This is, yeah.
Okay, Mahoy, you're gonna have to talk louder.
Oh,
Okay, can you?
can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely. So I'm gonna try and adjust my.
Try again.
Okay, try to
Okay,
speak. Can you-
testing.
Oh,
You better?
yes, yes.
You can hear better now. Okay. The process. When I first came into this office in 1992, there was already I guess the slims, the very first, before it got to be computerized, digitized, it was a printout. And the people who, my understanding of those who worked on that, they took the tax map key parcels and using, I guess they had a methodology. The group was a retired surveyor, a retired state surveyor, a land division, land management retiree administrator, and a few others. But what all they told, all they said was that they determined the ceded land status, and when they found that this discussion about if the parcel was 50% or more, the status was 50% or more one way or the other. That's all I was told. I was not, I came into that system. And when I was requested, whenever there was cause to, it wasn't an auditing of any sort. It was pretty much piecemeal. Like I said, having cause to, then to research and determine the ceded trust status. We've always, as defined in the Admissions Act, in Section 5 of the Admissions Act, we'd run through it. I would run through the chain of title, the history of that land parcel, and it pretty much came down to the acquisition, the government's acquisition to that parcel, whether it started off from the Mahele and came straight through as 5B lands at statehood, or whether it was private property at the Mahele acquired by the kingdom government or the provisional government or the territory, and or as well as by what the document type. If it was an exchange deed after the territory, then that private property acquired as such with an exchange deed would replace the trust status going out with the land exchange by the government. So this is how I would determine once we got into the Admission Act and statehood, and the acquisition was was that chain of title was researched and reported on. The status was that's given to the subject parcel. That was our determination.
Boy, Sherry has got a question.
Okay, I read that the SLIMS system had 1,392,515 acres in it. So did you do all of that? Tracing all of that?
No, I did not do all of that.
Okay.
I did only such parcels that I had cause to do, meaning that people, I would be asked to research and determine a
Okay.
specific parcel, yeah.
So were other people involved in the effort, or did you just do parcels that had so-called financial value, in terms of creating income and proceeds, or did you, I mean, like, were the watersheds places where, you know, the conservation district or preservation zone, were those included?
The parcel that I were asked, that I got involved with, were
Yeah.
specific to tax map keys. And so, I mean, I was, you know, it had nothing for me, because it was to determine the ceded trust status, which had all to do with the government's acquisition derivation data, and that specific parcel's chain of title. That was more that's what I focused on to get to the determination, rather than the usage or arbitrary districting. I mean, I wasn't,
Yeah,
you know, aware of, I didn't research the districting of it, unless say it was, say, on the shoreline and then submerged lands, and if the title line was whether submerged or fast land, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, unless I had cause to.
Okay, but were there other people doing it besides you, or you were the only one doing that, determining trust status and for lands that were envisioned to be included in SLIMs?
Historically, I mean, we did have, there was, gosh, forgive me, I have a very mature memory cell, which
That's okay. That's
it-
okay.
yesterday, every day feels like it was just yesterday.
Okay.
But so as far as the time frame, but we did have, there were periods in time while I sat in this office, there were assistants, and
Yeah,
I believe like Joanna Kalele was one, and she was my assistant, and there was she was tasked with, I guess, more like, I guess, auditing and verifying the trust
Uh-huh.
status that were reported on many parcels of land, and I don't know how that was prioritized, but I, you know, so there was that, or there was she, and then I presently have an assistant with me, and you know, but we're doing it with cause, what you know, parcel by parcel. It's not, I wouldn't call it an official auditing of any kind. It's just determining the status.
when you say you're continuing to do that, are you looking at lands that are already in the PLTIS? Or are you looking at parcels that had been omitted for one reason or another?
It would vary. It depends on the requester.
Yeah, I see.
Sometimes, you know, different agents, different islands,
Yeah.
different agencies, I think.
So this request you just heard today from Trustee Trask, Mililani Trask, about the Mauna Kea parcels, is that something that you would, you know, generally be following up on if you got a request about it? Not
It would
being
be
in
something
the,
that, yes,
in the
it would be,
PLTIs? Yeah,
yeah, if there was cause for us to research it,
yeah.
it would come via request. Yes.
Okay, so did the SLIMs include submerged lands as well as, you know, fast lands? Did you include those lands? Or, and if you did, was that just limited to the harbors?
Okay. Again, it was, I mean, I can't really,
Okay,
I can't really speak for whether
Yeah.
they did or did not.
Yeah.
Only on the base, because then as a system in place at the time, it was used, in my work, it was used as a resource, but not necessarily the determining factor. Because it didn't tell me the whole chain, what I needed to know. Yeah.
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 So can I, maybe I can maybe comment a little bit on that. So I don't think submerged lands as a category is necessarily in SLIMs and now Voyager, because it is, you know, it's kind of it's not that easily definable in terms of a, like an area, but if there are dispositions in submerged lands, like if we have an ocean lease or something, we would, that disposition would be in SLIMs or voyager,
then-
excuse me.
And you would
The disposition.
categorize it as a 5B land or 5F land under the Admissions Act?
Yeah, submerged lands, yeah, there'd be
Yeah.
5B, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
but you would only address it if it was being utilized in some specific way.
Correct. If there's like, let's say, an easement for an encroaching seawall, or, you have the fish farm leases, something like that. Yeah, but we wouldn't necessarily have generally submerged lands as itself, right? Yeah.
So Ian, is
Mhm.
is the PLT at PLITS? Is that an exhaustive inventory of all ceded lands?
I-
Of-
I mean, I would say it's pretty close. I mean, and I think let me clarify something too, as I'm trying to answer some of the questions before I forget. I think it is, it is pretty comprehensive based on the data we have. Going back to, I think, and maybe tying the question of this audit, and, we've never done one, and I don't think I'll just come on and say, I don't think we think an audit is necessary because, I think according to our last calculation, like 97 to 98% of the lands are deemed ceded already. So it's very few of the lands are not ceded. So I think if I can see if there's maybe an issue, we could look at the land, whatever land is in question, but not a full audit, because I'm assuming you would not challenge it if the land has been deemed ceded, right? I mean, that's not an issue.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think if we were to undertake such a process of, checking the veracity or the accuracy, it would be across the board. I don't think we would say, let's
Do you-
just
do you
forget
have-
about it.
Do you have a listing of lands that may not be included in our system that you have a question about?
I don't.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
I am more questioning the system
Sure,
itself.
sure.
I think Trustee Trask brought up an
Yeah.
important question today.
Yeah.
But,
and-
okay, I want to confirm what you did say. I think it was Mahoy who said this,
Yeah.
that what I said, which is that if it's less than 50% in the parcel ceded lands, then it's counted as not ceded. If it's more than 50% in that's ceded, then it's counted as ceded. But we don't have a list of which lands are combined. So I just want to clarify that that's what you said. I'm not saying anything about it or anything, just something that maybe we want to follow up on.
Do we
Yeah.
have a list of where there's a mixture so that you could easily identify those parcels? Ian Mahoy?
In my experience, okay, and to that first question, yes, that statement with regards to the 50% or more or less determination, that was spoken to me by one of the original, I guess, researchers in that first program. Yeah. As far as a listing, as far in my, I've been here since 1992. I've only come across 2 parcels of land that have been I've researched and shown that there were 2 or more parcel types. One was in, I think Pohokaina, around the Pohokaina area. And the other one was down by Kalani Street, the Cannery area. So those 2 parcels, I mean, that I personally have worked on.
Okay, well, I'm wondering also, have any
Millie
reports?
has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mililani?
Millie, Trustee Trask, go ahead.
No, I'm following this very intently. And when I took a look at it, there's really 2 approaches we can take. one is trying to take a look at certain categories of trust assets. But it seems to me that when you look at the ceded land trust, it is a percentage, part of that trust is land. The other part is submerged lands, shoals, reefs, and atolls. Research being done offshore of my island for manganese nodules. But the state laws in terms of the ceded lands are not just impacting dry land. When I take a look at how the state licenses tourism, the state licenses dozens, just on Big Island out of Kona, dozens of tourism boats. And they're all going out, going snorkeling and that, but they are not paying any revenue. But they use submerged ceded lands commercially. You know, I'm trying to look first and paint with a broad stroke some of the critical things we've already looked at here. Is that the SLIM system is old. It was not put together for purposes of being representative of the ceded land trust itself. And I'm saying this because we're looking at revenues from the ceded land trust, not just the dry land, but also there should be some categories which I know don't exist, like revenues that come in from submerged lands relating to tourism activities. I cannot find the value of the manganese nodule research that's being given out. And they're telling me that that is not a commercial license. It isn't, it's for research, but nevertheless, they're doing it and they're doing the same thing they're doing at Mauna Kea. They're taking the data from the trust, which they are then commercializing and selling. So that's why I'm saying, I just wanted to make that comment that we're, you know, we've not, it doesn't seem that we have an agreement as to what we're doing. Are we just going to look at dry lands, proceeds and revenues therefrom, which is how the state has handled it in the past. But that is not the ceded land trust. When we go back to the Congress, I mean, to the state legislature, and we give them our report, the first chapter should be what we have done and what we have not done. So if we're not going to report on submerged ceded land income, then I want it stated in the first section. This report covers revenues and proceeds from some of the ceded land trust consisting only of dry land. But even when I take that look, I find all of these things that somehow are slipping through the reporting, like Mauna Kea, and it's thousands of acres and millions of dollars for my office. So I'm thinking that perhaps while we have these discussions, which are very important, maybe we need to, I'm not saying narrow the scope, but at least clarify it. Because if we're not going to look at the proceeds and revenues from the dry ceded lands, I want to know it now. Because one of the things we have extremely valuable on dry land is geothermal resources. And we can't let it slip through the cracks. You know what I'm saying, colleagues?
Yes.
I just feel that, you know, I don't want to go around in circles, but our discussions are so critical now. Because the legislation is not clear and I'm reading it one way. Ceded lands trust, public land trust. But when we start talking about public, are we throwing away revenues from tourism activities that are actually licensed by our state? Are we throwing that away? Are we not going to look at other categories that are on the dry land? I just, you know, it's sort of a question because we're either gonna have to define our scope to be broad, or we're gonna have to define it to be very narrow. And I think starting out, if we're not gonna look at the submerged lands, then we need to say that and put it down. But I'm very kanalua to give up revenues for Hawaiians from submerged lands and for other ceded lands. Because, you know, if it's ripping off the Hawaiian, you can bet the public's losing. You know, all we're getting is 20%. So the amount the public loses, instead of getting their 80%, is significant, you know?
No, Millie,
Can I-
oh, go ahead. Who's that?
Oh, no, I just want to make some, clarify, and I think, Trustee Trask raises, I think, a lot broader issue, but I think speaking for land division at DLNR, if we have a disposition and it gets revenue, so submerged land lease, permit for a surf contest, it's submerged lands, we pay 20%. I can't speak for every agency. I don't know what every agency does. We pay 20%. Geothermal revenues, we pay 20%. Mauna Kea, you brought up, but we don't, we aren't necessarily the direct landlord at Mauna Kea, so we don't see any revenue. But I would point to is in addition to what I'm talking about, the PLTIS Voyager is the annual Act 178 report, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but that is all the agencies who are getting income from the ceded land trust. They're supposed to report the income and what is paid to OHA as part of that report. And we submit it to the legislature every year, but we don't audit or verify what the other agencies report. They report is what they report, and it's included in our report. But but I would want to make clear that we don't withhold anything, like any revenues we make off of submerged lands or geothermal. I just want to make that clear for you folks.
So I think we are sort of at this crossroads.
Yeah.
Sort of the fun, are the definitions, is there consensus on the definitions? Because I think what we're explaining is how DLNR comes up with the PLTS, how we identify ceded lands, the process that we go through, and where you can find it. I think what Ian also just shared is how we report revenues. Whatever revenue comes to us off of the use of ceded lands, we will report that in the Act 178 annual report. Now, what Mililani is raising, and I think what Sherry, some of the things you guys are raising, you're raising too, is how do we define revenue? How do we find use of ceded lands? Mauna Kea is a good example, since land division doesn't go and check on how the University of Hawaii reports it. That's up to we only report what land division, what we collect as revenue. So I can only speak on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, but because we're representing the state, I do understand that there may be broader questions that you may have as to, are we all talking about apples and apples, or are we talking about apples?
Okay, I'll call you back.
Okay, well, here,
I have
our
a question.
job. Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Go
have a
ahead.
question. I'm a really real estate question,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
I'm not in you folks'. What I want to know is in 1959, when we became a state and the lands were transferred back to the state of Hawaii to be stewarded by us, by the state, by the federal government, what was the description of the transfer?
Did we get a conveyance document, the
Yeah.
state of Hawaii or something like that?
What was
there
conveyed to
meets and
us?
bounds or?
I don't.
So here's what I would like to suggest that we
Okay.
do next, okay? Because I think we're kind of very appreciative of the time of your staff and the help that they've given us. But I think our job is assigned by the Hawaii State Legislature is to account for all ceded lands in the public land trust inventory. Okay, so I'm trying to determine, what I've been trying to do is determine what's in there,
Okay.
how it was done,
Yeah.
But we're talking about something that's been going on since 1990, right? So I'm wondering if rather than waste, take everybody's time here, if there could be somebody at DLNR that's designated, I could talk to further to get more information. Okay, and, but that's our job. Okay, all ceded lands. Okay, I know that there's lands that are ceded lands that have been sent out from the DLNR inventory, right? And so we're talking about other state agencies too, but you know, the governor could have appointed anybody, didn't have to just be DLNR or
You're
BNF
right,
or
you're right.
DHHL. So maybe you and I can discuss
Sure, sure.
what, how about state agencies? And just for your information, when you hear about the financial review, you'll find that University of Hawaii does not report. Okay, and that's not your fault, it's their fault, but that can be part, that should be and can be part of the report. I think Trustee Trask's point about the submerged lands and, you know, the I think that's part of our job as well. If we identify something that is not being reported,
Sure.
okay, because many state agencies report but don't pay. They say we don't owe you, okay, but they do report, but UH doesn't report sometimes. So, but I think that we should, because our job is number 2, account for all income and proceeds derived from the public land trust. So I think that as a goal to do our job right, you know, and I always like to do everything right if possible.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we should do what we were told to do. And if the information is beyond our scope of knowledge, because we don't have UH here, or we don't have Harvard's here or whatever.
But to make the recommendation.
Oh, but we got you.
We-
Oh, I
mean,
forgot. Okay, well, anyways, maybe we could, you know, that could be
have a small-
something the BNF could.
Because it does,
Yeah. Yeah,
the statute or the
Yeah.
act does provide the working group with cooperation of the department or agencies that uses, so it does. we do
yeah,
have
was
the
they're
ability-
supposed to.
Yeah, we have the ability
Yeah,
to ask them questions.
Okay.
So, but I suspect it is making sure that we are all operating under the same set of definitions. What's the definition of revenue? What's the definition of?
it doesn't
proceeds?
say revenue, it says
Well, it
income and
says-
proceeds, but
Well,
okay,
Okay, well, I was looking at income, okay, definition of income, definition of proceeds.
okay.
And maybe that's fundamentally, are all of the departments operating off of the same set? And it sounds like your audit and
Yeah.
engaged work showed that it may not be all the same.
But whether or not they're right in there, I
Yeah,
mean, I think
so-
UH is not the definition, it's
Okay.
just like we educate Native Hawaiians, therefore we don't know you
And is
anything.
that the difference between what proprietary versus sovereign? I mean, that's it's okay.
That's
so
different.
Different.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no,
Okay.
okay, no.
You know, I've
a
been.
lot more than I do. on
Now,
this
well,
one.
I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
more
yeah,
than
yeah,
the
yeah.
director of
Okay.
DLNR, believe me, but I,
But so how would you like to recommend that we move forward?
well, I'm just thinking we've already spent 1 hour and I know that this chair likes to keep a tight schedule.
No,
Okay,
I'm good.
all right.
I'm learning from the discussions.
Mhm.
Okay.
But I want to remind you that this whole thing came about because of the constant questioning by the legislators. And I know Ryan can back me up
Yeah,
in asking us specifically, what are we basing our ask on, you know? And the biggest thing was between whether it's net or gross.
Mhm.
That was the biggest wrestling
Yes.
words. And every time we talked about our true public land trust owings, they'd say, do you have an inventory?
Mm.
That was the constant question every single year. So, I mean, we need that's why I asked the question, what was turned over in the transfer in 1959? That's the inventory. You don't buy a house and the house is not described in your deed.
Mm.
So what did we get?
I think we got the admissions act.
The admissions act, which-
well,
which made the definitions,
Yeah.
right, between C, D, and right.
But maybe
C,
you have
D.
maybe what you could do for all of us is see what the deal in our library has, you
Well, I
know.
can ask Mahoy right now.
All right.
Mahoy has done title report. Mahoy, if you're still on the line, and with Ian. In 1959.
Sorry, Mahoy's coming back. Wait, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure. In 1959, under the Admissions Act, did the federal government literally transfer a deed to the properties that were transferred back, the ceded lands that were transferred back to the state of Hawaii under the Admissions Act? Did they give us a deed, a paper deed? How is that identified, or is it identified on any of the lands that were transferred back to the state pursuant to the Admissions Act?
Okay, there, I'll try to make it as abstractly clear as possible.
Okay.
Okay, through the Admissions Act, Chapter 5, it's more like a blanket through operation of law, this act that they use the 5A lands, or those let's see what the word specifically used as the case, where the 5A lands that the state succeeds to the title of the territory of Hawaii. And these are the classification of lands that the territory between 1900 and 1958-59 acquired outright. So that the United States has no claim or never received those lands. It went directly to the territory. So that's the 5A land. That's real easy. The 5B lands now, the United States grants its title to all of the lands, the public land, public properties, what have you. So this is, I see as basically that group of lands that from the Mahele stayed with the governments, and all the way through, to the unawarded, unsold lands that each of the governments had since the Mahele as government lands, and then you come the crown lands at the territory, the provisional government territory. So these become basically the 5B lands, which is the simple chain of title. But then there's other lands now that the United States is going to grant. Some of it ceded, some of it acquired. The United States acquired private properties, Dillingham Airfield, the portions of Dillingham Airfield, they acquired, but they acquired by exchange of ceded lands, which then made those private properties that acquired, and made them, they became ceded. So it didn't get the whole mixture kind of thing. And then, so yes, in answer to try to simply answer, and blanket deeds afterward, or not blanket deeds, specific deeds afterwards by section C and D in 5, and in chapter 5 of the Admissions Act, the United States is still holding the use of it, but then upon the U.S. no longer needing it, there's a conveyance by deed specific to such parcels that, and then make reference to this public law. Yeah. So
as Chair Lindsay was asking, you're saying it was by operation of law. We didn't get a specific deed for each of the parcels that the federal government was transferring back to the state.
No, that's what I'm saying. No,
So do we have a map that shows the A, B, C, D?
Did they do a map or anything like that?
Oh,
Or that's all there is? That's all there is.
It's like the instrument of conveyance was essentially the Admissions Act.
Yeah, but how do we know what's
Yeah.
part of the Admissions Act?
And so,
Back to the
if I may, understand, humbly, in the understanding that there was no government since the beginning, the monarchy, all the way through, no government has ever had exhaustive, complete inventory of its lands. So, we're creating one, and so we've been creating one, I've been
Yeah.
trying to, so this is where, it's a task.
So what percentage, if we're creating, are we at?
Well, McCoy, you said, was it 98% of the lands are seeded?
But that's,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, by our best estimate, 97 to 98% of the lands, the state lands are classified as ceded lands.
But the categorization of those ceded lands, whether it's B, C, or D, is a definitional issue
Right.
when it comes to the application of revenue. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Is that a correct statement?
B, C, well, I think what we're saying is 98 is B, 5B, right? Because C and D aren't quite, right? C and D is like still held, I'm sorry, by the federal government or something, right?
but you're,
Okay.
are you, so you're saying that 98% of the lands that the state holds are ceded lands? And
Yeah.
then I think what the question was,
How much
how,
acreage?
okay, how much acreage is that? And then the second question is that all in the PLTIS? 100% of the state lands, are they all reported in the PLTIS except for land, at least all the DLNR lands? Because you already said
okay.
maybe UH or Mauna Kea is not in there.
No. So, okay, so the Mauna Kea is in there and it'll be like it'll note that it's under UH's management, right? So
All right,
it'll be in there and it'll note it's under UH. Or if it's under DOA or DOT, that's actually the difference between the PLTIS and the old SLIM/Voyager. Once the land got transferred out of DLNR, like for example, the Act 90 pasture transfer is a good example. The recent ones is that,
yeah,
we don't keep track of what DOA does with, that's their tenants, right? After that, it's their land, their tenants.
yeah,
We don't keep track of that, but PLTIS OHA is still supposed to, keep track of those lands, provided, that it's updated. So it would be in PLTIS. PLTIS is, so I'm gonna share my screen again, just so you guys can.
Yeah. And
see it.
maybe, would you mind showing us Mauna Kea in PLTIS?
Okay. Okay, let me give you a sample first. So it's
Okay.
a GIS-based system. So you can click on any parcel, right? And pretty much anywhere and get, like if it's a state parcel, it's red, right? So it'll tell you that, it'll list it, like this is the airport, it'll give you the
I was just gonna
information.
say, that looks like the airport.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it'll be in there and pretty much any parcel. Now, are there some parcels like, yeah, I've seen like, for example, part of a stream where you click on it and it says unknown, right? Or not necessarily, so there's
Okay.
going to be some gaps, but for the most part, everything's assigned. And you even get like a private owner, right? If you click on a parcel that's privately owned, you won't see, you'll see the TMK and the owner of record, right? So even a private owner is in there. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what so I would say, go on a limb and say, yeah, I think it's mostly, you would capture most of the lands in the PLTIS. So
Yeah,
let me go back. I'm going to stop share and then you want to see Mauna Kea, right?
yeah,
Okay. So let me I have to set up the website on
okay, thank you very much.
yeah, sorry, give me a minute here but yeah, so
Yeah.
it should trace, sorry, it's got to log in and then let me share the screen. Okay, can you see my PLTIS screen?
Uh-huh, yeah,
Okay. Sorry, just. Sorry, the loading isn't that quick. Okay. So I'm a little. Let's see, is this the summit right here? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Mauna, but right here?
Yeah.
So this is the forest reserve. So this is the forest reserve.
Is that moving?
did she?
Yeah, so there's a GL to UH. Does this look correct?
No, we're not
We
seeing
lost your
anything.
screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone else is sharing a screen. Sorry.
Okay.
Is that really Lonnie? Are you sharing that screen?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amber, you,
Oh, you're trying to find the Monica and the.
I'm not sharing screen.
Oh,
Trustee Trask is sharing screen.
yeah, I thought I
Wait,
saw.
Oh, no.
I'm stopping her sharing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Okay, try again.
Okay. So is,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
okay.
it.
This is the summit?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Sorry, I'm not familiar with the geography over there.
that's it.
Okay, so does this look like GL 4191 to UH 13,000 acres? Okay, so click on that. And see, and this is, so so like I said, we don't necessarily have the information for that. But we have the parcel and data. Like I said, I think what you'd have to do is cross-reference this with the Act 178 report. I don't know what I don't look at UH's submissions necessarily, so I don't know what they report for this, but I'm saying, yeah, you can cross-reference with their report that they provide us as part of the 178 annual report for revenues.
Would you ever insert the number after you took a look at 178, or you just don't do that?
No, UH, we rely on the agencies to update.
I see.
Yeah, their own info. I mean, not, be an excuse, but we do have a staff position that is, for the PLTIS, the maintenance, but for the most part, it's been vacant for quite a bit of time. I mean, we get candidates and they kind of come and go, but it's not been a position that we've been able to unfortunately keep filled consistently. So
It's self-reporting.
yes, for the other eight.
We don't question or verify any other state agency or any other public, county, whatever, because they self-report. They input into PLTIS their information, right?
Yes. The agencies should input their own data, much like they provide us the Act 178 report data. Same thing. We rely on them.
How many other databases are there?
For DLNR, we have Voyager and PLTIS, and not really a database, but the Act 178 annual report. I'm not sure what, for example, UH may have their own internal land management database. I'm sure they probably do, same with DHHL and DOT, but we don't have access to those. So I'm not sure how many specifically everybody else has, but for us at Land Division, Voyager, PLTIS, and the Act 178, that's more like not really a database, but the report that we provide.
And Ian, for Act 178, you rely upon PLTIS.
No. That's our revenue, so we rely. I mean, we have the records for that. Like we know what we paid, or what revenues come in and what revenues are paid out. I mean, the 20% to OHA, we can track that internally for us.
But the PLTIS is, if the question is the inventory of ceded lands, this is it, PLTIS.
Yes.
System of record.
Yeah. So this is, when we look at account for all ceded lands in the public trust inventory, I guess this is what we would rely upon. And we don't verify any other agencies. We just self-report.
So no acreage?
On top of the individual parcels, there may be acreage. Do you have a total acreage, Ian?
I'm going to defer to Chris on that, but I'm not sure if PLTIS, we can draw up a report that lists maybe, if we took all 5B lands and drew up a listing. I'm not sure if they would give us a total acreage, but Chris, I don't know, is that possible under the PLTIS?
Yeah, it's most likely possible. I have to take a look, but we do back of the acreage.
I mean, we could also try and write to each state agency, like you pointed out, they're supposed to help us out.
Yeah.
and ask them to report
Yeah.
what's their
Well,
acreage.
Yeah,
or their acreage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
the PLT acreage.
And maps if
Yeah.
possible.
Okay, so,
or,
You know, I think what we should do is be pretty comprehensive. Every state agency. And what we're requesting is all of the data that they have demonstrating the lands and the resources from 1959, as well as the present. Because if there was a land exchange or something, but I do think that we're not going to get to the goal if we just work with DLNR. So we do need to send this out to every state agency and also ask for any documents pertaining to title or any encumbrance and any map or diagram. Because I don't think we can expect DLNR to find in their system what we're going to find in other agencies, but like, for instance, the Department of Education. Some of these things, some of our ceded land, the submerged lands, I'm not sure that DLNR would have it. But I think that if we're going to do a comprehensive job, we have to have the data from all agencies, and DLNR would not have it. In some cases, for instance, airports, federal law requires that all receipts, revenues of airports are held in a revolving fund. That's fine, but I still want to know what my 20% is. A federal law saying that 20%, that all revenues of harbors used in a national and international commerce, and airports the same, are to be held in a revolving trust. Okay, I get it. But I'm still owed 20% of the revenues coming in from another source.
okay, no,
You
you
know?
guys, you raise a really good point. So, because I just want to make sure we are operating under the same set of definitions. If we're going to ask other agencies, because I think from DLNR's perspective, the PLTIS is our exhaustive inventory of
Mhm.
state ceded lands.
Mhm.
But with respect to the other agencies, so could I ask, or could we ask? Could you draft up what would be the questions you would want us to ask the other agencies?
okay. Why don't we draft a letter
Okay,
for our
okay.
next
Yeah,
meeting to
yeah,
be reviewed, so
yeah.
it goes out from all of
Right.
us.
Good
not-
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then we
Yeah.
can, you know, to me, even the question of how do you calculate income? How do you
right.
calculate proceeds?
yeah,
How do you define
yeah,
it so that we know that we're all up? And we
Yeah.
may find that we're not operating under the same set of
Yeah.
assumptions here.
yeah,
And, you know, I
Okay.
don't know if we're gonna be able to get them to give us all the maps of each of the ceded lands, but we can maybe ask them, because they're supposed to input everything into the PLTIS.
right.
So I
But
guess
you
you
don't
could
have-
ask them, how do you determine?
All right,
You know, who inputs, you know, because you've
All
heard
right.
from Mahoy,
yeah,
how he inputs
right,
DLNR. But
right,
how do the other agencies do the same?
yeah,
What do they do when there's a mix between seeded and non-seeded?
okay,
So that we all have the same
Yeah.
set of guidelines. And then two, how do you determine, you know, are any of them generating revenue off of submerged lands?
mhm.
And how's that accounted for? So, okay, maybe that's a good idea, Sherry. Shall you and I
Yeah.
take that on?
Yeah, why don't you and I work on that? And I think that trustee Trask is making a very good
Oh,
point,
yeah.
which is, first of all,
Yep.
the way it works,
Right.
it's self-reporting
Right,
anyways, but also it's almost not fair
Yeah.
to ask DLNR to do all of
And we
this.
greatly appreciate that. We
Okay.
greatly appreciate not
All right,
placing
so
that
why don't you
burden.
and I work on
Okay,
that for the
okay,
next
okay.
meeting? I think when we look at the N and K
Yes.
report, when you get that presentation, I think that will be helpful to you
Yes.
Do you
to
have a
work with
copy
me.
of that
I
report?
did, so I.
Here you
reviewed
go.
that, so
Oh,
Thank you.
there you go. It's a
Yeah.
copy for you.
Um,
Yeah.
Do you have one? Lou?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Stand in here. Yeah.
I think I need myself a copy. So, yeah,
So can I ask you something? How does DLNR calculate the rent leases permitting as part of accounting for the incoming and proceeds?
so Ian, that's a better question for
Yeah.
Ian with our land division. Ian, Chair Lindsay is asking, how does DLNR calculate revenue off of our ceded lands, the dispositions when we lease or RP? How do you calculate the revenue?
Well, okay, for long-term dispositions, and we're relying on kind of statutory requirements. So for long-term dispositions like leases or long-term easements, fair market value is determined by independent appraisal, regardless if it's ceded or non-ceded. So if it's like a short-term right of entry, 1 day for an activity, it's usually 10 cents per square foot, depending on the, RPs, it varies, sometimes if it's we may get it appraised depending, or, we use maybe, an alternate, it depends. Like, for example, like if it would be like a pasture RP, because the board, under statute, the board has the authority, the autonomy or the authority to set the rents for like an RP. So for pasture, it might be like, we may not bother appraising it because the rent is so low. We charge maybe a lower rent based on that, depending on the use. But like I said, any long-term dispositions, leases, easements, by independent appraisal, fair market value.
And that's all provided by statute too, right,
Yeah.
Ian?
Yes.
So we follow the statute.
Mhm.
In general, all disposition of public lands is by public auction unless it falls under one of the exceptions. So we generally will follow, but it's usually fair market value. Although there are times if you're a nonprofit or if you're a utility or another government agency, we may have a different, sometimes it's nominal consideration. Or yeah, like I said, a nonprofit, it may be less than fair market, but in general, it's fair market. Otherwise, unless it falls under one of the exceptions. But that's how DLNR does it.
Yeah.
Now, how other agencies do it may be very different. So we cannot answer for how any other agency may do it. Okay.
Mhm.
And Ian, our calculations are when we Chair Lindsay also talked about net versus gross. It's just gross. We don't, that's how we calculate this, right?
Yes, it's gross. I mean, if it's hypothetically, if it's $100 a year, we pay OHA $20.
Yeah, so there's no discount off
Right.
of, it's just gross. So
Whatever is
that's-
collected.
Yeah, whatever is collected, that's what we will,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan, remember that discussion in Ways and Means?
Yes. Yes, so I can't recall the year.
2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? Well, the Ways
Yeah.
and Means report, there was a consolidated report by several agencies, and I'll have to look back in my notes as to how revenues was determined, how they determine the whether considering that land PLT land or not, how they came up with the percentage of non-PLT and PLT lot, and whether that was reported on in Act 178 in their inventory.
Do you still
I-
have that report?
I have to look. I think
Okay.
I must have it.
All right.
It's probably 2018 and 2019, it was
Yeah.
sometime back, but I
Okay.
recall that
Okay.
discussion that we had. It was a informational briefing, if I'm
Mhm.
not mistaken.
And
Yeah.
Sherry, you and I had that discussion in the Leah lawsuit, right?
Right. Well, that was a little different, okay,
Yeah.
because it was a fight over the definition of what should be paid, but it was, should the money be paid at the time of the transfer from DLNR to HFDC, or should it be paid at fair market value from HFDC to the third party buyer.
Right.
Okay, so you know who took what
Right,
position,
right.
right?
Yes, I do. I do.
And you remember who sent the check back
do.
and who took the check.
I do remember. that.
But, and you do remember that in the end, Leah Lee went to DHHL.
I know.
Yeah, so it was,
Yes.
it was
Yeah,
all
I mean,
good. It
no,
was all
yeah,
good. It was all
That-
good.
And we had discussed that even at that time.
Yeah, we
To
had,
avoid,
Yeah,
avoid
to get,
actually going up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't alienate the lands, just,
Yeah.
transfer it over to DHHL. So.
yeah,
yes.
and we would agree.
Right,
right.
right, right. So
Then all was, everybody was happy.
I should have listened to this. But anyway, okay.
Okay,
So, yeah, so we'll work on that.
yeah,
That letter, okay.
yeah, we'll
that-
work on that letter and maybe if Brian could
I'll
send
round up
us,
the report.
yeah, if you could
Um,
send that to
Yes,
us, that
yeah.
would be good.
It may be outdated only because from what I recall, the report was
Yeah,
using an executive order for determination of
yeah,
PLT revenues
right.
under a different administration. I think it was 2006,
Okay,
and that was updated. The
Yeah.
executive order was updated in last year because the
okay,
legislation increased.
right.
the,
But I think it would
um,
send, I think they probably using the
No,
same.
oh yeah, for sure. The
So then you
methodology is
probably still
the-
using
yeah.
the
numbers are
EO
different.
0606
Yes.
under, yeah, lingo, I
I think
believe.
I think the new EO is an iteration of the old EO, so
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna get much
Yeah.
divergence there.
But what's underlying it, it'd be interesting just
Yeah.
to, I think helpful so that we can,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So shall we close this presentation? Do you want to ask Ian or deal in our stuff? Anything more?
I think if you, there could be somebody I could talk to,
Sure.
you know,
I-
maybe Ian
I
or,
think Ian would probably be the
yeah,
most helpful.
and then he could,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. yes.
if that would be all right with
Oh,
you,
yes.
I think we could close this for now,
Yeah, no,
for now.
I totally trust Sherry that she's gonna treat Ian with great
Oh, yes.
respect and
Of
She
course.
is.
not take
Okay.
advantage of him, right, Ian?
So can you folks check
appreciate
your
it, thank you.
calendars? If September 19 is good for the next meeting,
Yes,
September 19th.
you're not traveling.
I am traveling and I am coming back on the 14th of September
my
and then I'm
gosh.
leaving again on the 23rd. So it sounds like a fabulous date to
Wow.
me.
I really picked a good date.
You did.
You-
And then maybe we'll look at N and K because we've already
Yeah,
been
we
at
can
it a couple hours today.
Unfortunately, I have a CWAR,
Okay.
water commission meeting that day, which
Okay.
generally runs the whole day. I'm
All
so
right.
sorry. Is there, what about the 21st? That's a Thursday?
We have a board meeting.
Oh, you
yeah.
have a board meeting. Okay.
Thursdays are bad.
You know, I have us on board the PLT meeting for Wednesday, the 20th. I've got that in my calendar.
Same
All right.
here for 10 a.m.
Yeah, for
Don't
10
we
a.m.
have
10 a.m.?
Yeah, 10 a.m.
a joint meeting? You know, we're in the process of selecting a new CEO and we've scheduled
Okay,
meetings of
good.
interviews
Oh,
Okay.
through, you know, we got over 500 applications.
oh, you're
Wow.
kidding.
Wow, that's
500, wow.
impressive.
So
Wow.
who doesn't like OHA?
That's impressive. I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
That's
Of course, that's-
congratulations.
that's,
Congratulations.
the whole globe.
The
I
whole
mean, not the
universe.
globe, but the
How
whole
many
United
people, yeah, I was gonna
States.
say, how many people from Hawaii?
31.
Oh, that's a pretty good
Wow.
number.
That's still a good number.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a good.
That
But
was
you
my
could-
first question.
But there could be Native Hawaiians
No,
or,
I checked that too.
all right, okay. Okay, all right. I
Oh, good for you. You've got a pool to
I
select
said, you
from.
know, maybe there's some Native Hawaiians that want to come home. Make
Yeah.
sure you check that.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have headhunters, you know?
Uh-huh,
Mm.
good
So-
for you. Wow, that's awesome.
Our board secretary has confirmed there is no board meeting on September 21st, therefore the 21st is open.
I can't
What about
hear.
the 20? I thought we just said the 20th.
Yeah, but you said you might have an interview scheduled that time?
The
Do you-
20th, what?
At the 20th?
Because I
That's
thought,
what's on my.
I thought you
calendar.
were, I
Yeah,
see,
I have
I
that
see,
on
I
my
see.
calendar.
I see, I
Yeah.
see, yeah.
Do you
It's the
have-
one, it's the one day that week that I'm actually available. It's the
Where?
21st,
20th?
the
Oh, the
21st.
Okay,
Maybe
that-
we'll
the
okay,
21st,
work
I'm
with
wide
that.
open, yeah.
All
I
right.
know I have something on the 21st, but maybe that can be moved.
21st works.
Yeah,
really
that
well.
works for me, 10 to 2.
So we're
But
erasing
you're
the
gone.
20th? We're not
Oh,
gonna
you're
meet
Looking
on
at
the
the
20th.
20th? Are you okay, Mililani?
The 20th, I have it in my calendar. I'm gonna erase it. Now we're saying we will do the 21st instead.
Tentatively, yes.
Yes. Are
What
you
time?
okay? Are
What
you okay?
time?
10 to 12?
Got it.
Got it.
Okay, good.
Okay, is that good, Sharon?
So members, we did not get to item C.
Yeah,
Want to
we
do
know.
that?
We didn't get to it, but on our agenda, we have it calendared. So the question to Amber is, do you have anyone signed up to speak on this item, Amber?
We do not have anyone signed up to speak on that item.
Fine, then we can move on, which we've already done, to the setting of the next meeting, which is this, is it September 21st at 1:30?
Yep,
No, 10
10 to
o'clock.
12.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, 10
to
a.m.
12.
Yes.
So then will we put the N and K report back on for that meeting? I think,
Yeah.
How much time do you need for that? Because
2 hours.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be the,
Full time, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I mean, these are the
Yeah.
two bases,
Yes,
your,
yes, yes.
what
Yes,
you're doing
yes.
for the inventory,
Yes,
and
The
then this
land
is,
and then the revenue.
All right.
yeah,
okay.
income and
pieces.
proceeds, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So we'll move
So-
the N and K to that.
Yeah, so I think,
And in the meantime, we'll try to
The
work on
methodology.
something.
yeah, we'll try to work
Yeah,
on
okay.
something,
That
yeah.
will be helpful.
yeah. And thank you very much for sharing your stuff with us
Oh,
today. I
no,
think it
it's-
was
it's
very good.
public, it's- And they're good.
I know,
yeah,
I
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but-
yeah.
So Don, would you please give the closing prayer?
All right. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to gather, to bring all of our different viewpoints together, to try to find a path forward of mutual respect and collaboration and cooperation for the betterment of the Hawaiian people. Mahalo for the spirit that you've embodied, all of us, one with the spirit of good intentions and goodwill. And I thank you. We also ask that you say an extra peace to those on Maui. Bless them and protect them, and bless and protect all of us. Mahalo.
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 Mahalo, Mililani. Good to see.
May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So move.
Second.
Okay,
Have you ever had an objection?
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very
Mahalo,
much,
Colin.